Hello, I'm Lodging Editor Kate Hughes. Thank you for listening to Lodging on Demand. For this episode, Ariela Kiradjian, partner and COO of BLLA, Fran Kiradjian, founder and CEO of BLLA, and Jonathan Newbury, SVP of Strategic Development at Preferred Hotels and Resorts, discuss the unique challenges facing boutique and independent hoteliers during the COVID-19 crisis. Let's start with how has the COVID-19 crisis impacted boutique and independent hotels differently than the rest of the industry? Fran and Ariela, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, the key phrase here is independent. So they normally don't have, million or billion-dollar companies there to help. I know that the CARES Act is there and it's supposed to be focused on helping the franchise owners of the big brand hotels. But as you know, we're the voice for more on the independent hotels, and we're fighting for them on a daily basis, whatever it takes. So it's important for the government to show that they care about the smaller businesses, which includes the boutique hotels, but also what's included in the hospitality industry is the restaurant side of this, and they desperately need a lifeline. Though I'm hearing that the funds were tapped out, but on Wednesday, we're supposed to get more funding, but I think that one's supposed to be just for more of the authentic smaller businesses. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, I heard just this morning on the news in the last actually half hour that some of the big restaurant brands, I don't know about the hotel brands yet, that they're returning the money that they got from the PPP program. And others, in that same umbrella of big restaurants are saying, it's so confusing and it's got to change. So I'm not sure exactly. I can't really report on what the hotel brands are doing. But also I want to say, boutique and independent hotels have way more of an opportunity now to kind of do something different. All hotels do, but in particular, independent boutique hotels can move a little bit quicker, and they can do some things to kind of keep their revenues, a little bit of revenue in check while they wait for this PPP money. So they're doing some really interesting and different things to bring in, some dollars, whether that's food and beverage or other things that they're able to sell and kind of put together.
And Jonathan, what's your experience been?
So for independent hotels specifically, I don't think there's really any difference for our hotels versus any other type of hotel, any other franchise company out there. There's literally, this crisis has decimated demand. There is no occupancy to speak of anywhere in the world right now, or very few places in the world right now. And there's no sector unaffected by this crisis. I think the only way that in which independent hotels have been affected differently, and I think it's already been covered, is that they don't have, standalone hotels don't have a multi-billion-dollar company behind them telling them exactly what they should be doing right now, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means they can be more flexible, and they can, instead of being told, hey, you have to lay off all your sales team, they can make choices on which positions to furlough or to lay off, and who's more valuable within that single hotel. But it's also, it's more difficult in the other sense that we don't have, the independent hotels don't have the edict and the advice that they sometimes desperately crave in order to know which direction to go. We're slightly different at Preferred Hotels because we do try and act like the brand. Well, we don't try and act. We are the brand for our hotels. We're the soft brand for our hotels. So we do try to give our hotels different tools in order to help them to really cope with this crisis. And we can come on to that in a bit of what we're actually doing, but we've certainly not left our hotels out in the cold. We've been working really hard behind the scenes to make sure they get all the best information about the CARES Act, which I think Fran's already said has been a bit of a disastrous rollout, very confusing, lines jammed, can't get through to anybody, talk to anybody about it. Even the banks that are supposed to be lending this money don't really have the clear guidance on how this should be handled yet. And so it's been a bit of a challenge for everybody. But certainly, if you have no help whatsoever, it's going to be nigh on impossible to be able to work this out.
What's been most unexpected about this crisis for boutique hotels? Jonathan, do you want to keep going?
Yeah, most unexpected. I think really the speed of the change. Well, two things: the speed of the change and the scale of the change. I mean, I was on a trip just a month ago to New York, flying back from there, and the next day after that happened, everything started. This whole coronavirus crisis caught up with the US that very next day. It was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, I believe. And I just can't believe how quickly we went from that to all offices closed and being at stay-at-home orders around the country. It was within a week of that. And then the scale of the change is unbelievable too. I mean, to go from, on average, I'd say our occupancies were hovering around about 70%. Early part of the year, the first quarter of 2020, and it dropped from that, not just here in the US, but Europe as well. As Southeast Asia had already been experiencing a lot of this, but it dropped in Europe and the US almost at the same time to single-digit occupancies, which led to most hotels closing with no revenue coming in at all. So they were the two most unexpected things. And I'd like to add a third one as well. And I don't want to, I'm trying not to get political because I don't think it doesn't serve anybody to say my team would be better than your team. But there's been no clear leadership, no clear plan for getting us out of this mess at a federal level. Everything that I'm reading shows that the states have had to pretty much go it alone. And until we get to a point of continuous and mass testing and outbreak tracing, contact tracing, we're not going to be able to get back to some semblance of normalcy. So that's also been the most unexpected thing, is the complete absence of a directive at federal level, but this is the direction we're going to go in. And again, not naming names or pointing any fingers, but it's really been very surprising that we've been left to our own devices, essentially at the state level.
Right. Fran, Ariela, what do you think?
Well, I mean, Jonathan, I definitely get where you're coming from with everything you're talking about. It was like one day people were like, okay, coronavirus, I don't know. And I feel like it was overnight where it was boom. Okay, doors were shutting left and right, panic set in immediately. But what's also really surprising to me was starting to see people turn their back on the industry when times got too tough. And I'm seeing a lot of true colors come out of this. And you know what? This industry, it's not for everyone, and I'm not judging it at all. I just know for myself, going through this crisis made me love my community of the hospitality industry even more. But I know that not everyone has that perspective.
Definitely. I mean, we're getting a lot of love notes, and it's very heartwarming, to see it on an everyday basis. Also, I just want to say there wasn't a playbook for anyone to follow. Most hotels, like most businesses, have some form of like a crisis management procedure in place, but obviously no one could have imagined, closing 100%. So decisions are kind of made on the fly, while keeping up with public information, which, as we know, it changes every single day. Yeah. But I do know from all of our supplier members, most owners, managers were on the phone immediately with their lawyers, accountants, and insurance companies, which is why we've been holding these webinars on those subjects, because it's going crazy. And I'm not saying the lawyers are making any money on this. They just need to help their clients, and they're busier than they have ever been before.
This is something you guys all have touched on, but in spite of this crisis, the boutique and independent hotel community has a little more flexibility to do out there business practices to keep their doors open. So how does this benefit creative-minded hoteliers when they do have this flexibility, even in a situation as dire as this one? Ariela, Fran?
Well, the first thing is the keyword you said, which is flexibility. So they don't have some giant power dictating what they can and cannot do. If they need a pivot, and I know pivot is so overly used right now, but it's something that's very relevant to everyone. So if they need a pivot, they can go pull an all-nighter and begin acting the next day through a really great strategy. And that's exactly what we saw happen across the board with boutique hotels all around the world. If they needed to be, content curators now to stay engaged with their guests, they're going to hire a writer, and they don't have to climb up some giant corporate ladder to get approval for it. They're going to do it if it makes sense. And so when social distancing is over, the last place anyone's going to want to be for the first few months is some gigantic hotel. The traveler, they're going to want two things: someplace small and someplace not in a major city. So those boutique hotels situated right outside of New York, like in the Catskills or right outside of LA and Ojai, I see that these hotels are going to be booked really quickly, and a lot of them have noticed this type of talk within the travelers, and they're continuing to be engaged with their customers through, live music on their Instagram Live or gathering, different kinds of influencers, because first of all, a boutique hotel, they reinvented what a hotel even was. It moved from being a hotel to being a cultural epicenter. And what that means is that they were gathering the local community. They were creating interactions between the guests and the locals, where people could meet each other. And I think this is just going to be enhanced, but just more on an intimate level, so that when the crisis happened, they already had the connections with the local influencers to be like, hey, do an Instagram takeover, talk to our audience, this, that, and that, because their focus was based on being this cultural epicenter. They were in a better position, I think, when this crisis hit.
Just to add to that, definitely outlying cities, I think, are going to be big winners for boutique hotels, like wineries, small upscale restaurants, probably retail boutiques. Who wants to go into a big Macy's or something? And all those like little specialty shopping stores. Urban hotels, they're generally smaller anyway and unique and experiential. So with that pent-up demand, I mean, that's what I'm hearing. I have so many connections, on Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's what I'm hearing from everybody. Yes, there's going to be some city hotels that will benefit, but I don't think in a really big way. Additionally, I think boutique hotels and the independents, they can definitely rely less on bookings from OTAs. I'm not saying 100%, but they can rely less on them and really focus on more niche markets, that are more local and driving distance. So, having, I think, a good PR strategy is super important for them, so that they can reach those niche travelers.
Jonathan, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, flexibility has always been the byword at preferred hotels and resorts. And flexibility at a hotel level is key in times of crisis like this. And I'd like to echo what Fran just said, is we're seeing it right now. The drive market is already picking up for this summer. We're already seeing those reservations coming into the hotels outside of the major urban population centers. So anything outside of LA, anything outside of San Fran, anything within a 4 to 5 hour drive, or New York, we're seeing those numbers come up. I was talking recently to one of our hoteliers in Cape Cod, and they're already showing 70% occupancy through July and August, and those reservations are not canceling, and it's quite a hefty premium as well. We just picked up 3 brand new hotels in New York State, upstate New York, one at Saranac Lake, one at Lake Canandaigua, and another one in the Finger Lakes, which actually was already in existence, called Inns of Aurora. All 3 of those properties, 2 of them are brand new, coming out of the ground. The third one is established, but smaller. They're all smaller type properties, and they're all boutique properties. And I think I'd echo that. I think if we get the hygiene messaging right on these hotels, people will trust a boutique hotel, a small independent hotel, far more than that 1,000-bedroom hotel, the Marriott in Times Square, for example. I think this social distancing has really impacted the psyche of the nation, the psyche of the globe, in fact. I think people are going to see more and more until we have a vaccine for this, for COVID-19. We are going to see people continue to practice social distancing, and they don't want to get on an airplane. They don't want to be in a big hotel where they're going to be walking past 1,000 people. They want to be in they're going to limit their risk, small properties, try to keep social distancing, drive in the car. I think that's the biggest, certainly the first rebound market for the US is going to be that.
Since we're talking about rebounds, what is the ramp up period going to look like for boutique hotels? Jonathan, like you said, you expect it to be fairly soon, and you don't see these smaller properties canceling as far out as the big ones.
I'm no oracle, that's for sure. And if I were, I'd probably be retired by now. But it's so difficult to say because the speed of change is still so fast. What I thought was true last week, I don't think is true this week. And things keep changing. I've also heard recently about a second surge of this virus in the fall if we lower the social distancing measures we have in place right now. And whether we do or not, I think it's going to automatically get more and more relaxed over the summer because people are just going to be more and more fed up of being locked indoors. I feel myself, I'm getting stir crazy. Being at home, I love my wife and children, but I'd rather spend a little less time with them than I'm currently spending with them. I have to spend a little less time. I think from a rebound perspective, yes, I think that I think independent hotels have a unique ability to rebound more quickly than the large franchise chain hotels because they have the flexibility, but also because they don't have the cost of the franchise fees that are in some cases have been postponed or delayed for a while, but they don't have that major cost that they have to deal with as well, the independent hotels. So they have flexibility in terms of what cash there is they can put into the market, if they're clever enough to put it into the PR and marketing campaigns to start driving that drive market to their hotels as the business starts to ramp up over the summer. I think from my perspective, and I've tried to say this as loud and clear as I can, and my company, Preferred Hotels and Resorts, are really trying to drive this home to our hoteliers as well. Hygiene has now become a major concern for our hotels, not just our hotels, all hotels across the world. I think people automatically are going to want to question, so what is this hotel doing differently now to make sure that firstly, I'm not going to catch coronavirus just by going sleeping in a hotel room where the person was there the night before had it. And secondly, what are they doing to protect their employees and their people within the hotel? And I think we're going to see a surge in the industry of and a clamoring for, I know there are technologies out there where you can heat the room, was previously used for bed bug technology, where you can heat the room to a certain temperature, which is known to kill bed bugs and bed bug eggs. I'm not sure if that's repurposable for viruses, but I'm sure it probably is. I also see technologies with UV lights, using UV lights to break down the RNA and DNA of these viruses in the hotel rooms. It's going to be technologies like that and hotel investing in technologies like that, I think, that are going to make the difference as they start marketing to a post-COVID audience that is really wary of any hotel that isn't making a big deal of what they're doing on their hygiene policies right now.
Well, I absolutely agree, Jonathan. I know you touched on a lot of things there. Obviously, hygiene is going to be huge. It's not going to be, we have a clean hotel, but you must have certain certifications. I really think that that's what's coming to the industry. I'm not sure who's going to lead that, but there's definitely going to be a new certification process, probably by the government or something like that. But then going back to more at the beginning of the conversation about flexibility, with the ramp up, I don't know what's going to happen because every 24 hours something changes. When I wake up in the morning and go on LinkedIn, everything I thought has now changed. But as of right now, I think more on the boutique side, they can get everything back in order quickly. And Jonathan, like you said, They don't have these giant, corporate companies taking giant commissions, from everything the hotel does. I mean, everything. So many times I've heard independent hoteliers say, you know what, I used to be with the brand, but I went independent because with my bottom line, the commissions were just so high of like every breath of air. So for a truly independent hotel, they don't have those giant costs that they now owe. They can, be more flexible in their strategy. A lot of them are becoming content curators, which I think they can take that knowledge and learn with how they've kept in touch with their audience digitally, bring that to the in-person experience, make everything intimate. Everything's not going to go back to normal. And those people who are like, oh, let's go back to February 1st, that cannot be the mindset for your hotel. It needs to be, how are we going to evolve and adapt? What is our new normal? And that's what everyone needs to focus on is, what are we doing now in the short term? And what are we doing in the long term? They need to balance both of those mindsets, because everything you do right now is going to affect both the short term and the long term. That's why strategy is it's never been more vital than right now. You need to have a game plan. You can find a lot of information on the internet. We've been doing that. You can hire advisors, or, there's amazing organizations like Preferred or BLLA, where we can also guide you through what to do. But again, no one has an answer. So I think the biggest thing is that hoteliers are gathering as much information as they can to make their own predictions.
Well, yeah, I mean, going back to what you were asking about, will the ramp up, period for boutiques be different? I mean, truly, it's going to be quicker and probably more efficient. Although everybody's going to have a plan in action, and associations and organizations like ours are going to really have to step up to the plate and provide some guidelines, which I think everybody's trying to do, including the hospitality groups like Preferred and Lux and all those small hotel brands, boutique hotel brands. Everybody's trying to get their information together as it happens, and be flexible enough to change it when it does. So I think that it's really just understanding the needs and what is going to help them now so that they can be prepared. There's a lot of great things they can do now.
What general advice would you have for boutique hoteliers at this time? Because like you have all said, it's changing so rapidly. So what should they do today when they hear this? Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, shameless plug. It really pays to be part of something right now. We definitely do not advocate going the franchise brand route because you're just going to be adding cost at this point, and a huge amount of cost as well. So joining something like us, but it doesn't have to be us. If you're not relevant for us, or if we're too competitive in your region, look at leading hotels, look at small luxury hotels, look at Relais and Chateau. There's true soft brands that don't come with an awful lot of cost, but come with a huge amount of support, especially in times like this. The town halls we've been holding, we've been pulling in heads of agencies, we've been pulling in corporate travel managers from some major corporates to actually speak on town hall events for our hoteliers. We've been doing this twice a month. We've done it twice in the last month, but we're going to be doing it twice a month until the recovery really starts. And they're giving some really actionable advice for our hoteliers right now. We created a roadmap to recovery document. We had some CARES Act webinars as well to try and help people understand how to go about applying for the loans and the money to keep their businesses afloat. So I think you need to be, and I'm sure leading hotels and others are doing similar things for their hotels too. So I think joining something and being something part of something larger than just you as a standalone hotel is really going to help you in the long term right now. Because, like Fran said, keeping on top of everything right now is nigh on impossible. And the amount of data and the amount of opinion and sheer content that's coming out my inbox every day, I can't keep up with it. So we have people who are doing this, are curating this, and we are discussing as an executive team within Preferred Hotels and Resorts what is the best course of action for our hotels around the world, and that's a really important thing to be able to pass on to individual hotels who really have one specific view of their market. They don't have the global view. They don't have the national and global view. I think that eventually, the other thing I think is eventually we're going to be back on an equal footing. But I think the psychological effect of this virus is going to drive more discerning clients to hotels where they can be assured of, and I've already said this about the hygiene standards of those hotels. But I think, again, this is one of the reasons to join a company that gives you a seal of approval for quality and maybe even for hygiene now as well. We're currently looking at our quality assurance documents and our standard documents, and looking at specifically at how the housekeeping aspects and how we are marking hotels on that. And we're going to make some requirements of our hotels to change their behavior in these areas so that our public and the people who do follow preferred hotels and resorts can be assured that when they come to us, this will be front and center, that they will be looked after, and that our hotels are going to mark and score on this. And I think the franchise brands are going to be doing exactly the same thing, because I think that's really, that psychological impact is going to be hugely important when we come out of this, or as we come out of this.
Fran and Ariela?
Just kind of jump in. Great thing, Jonathan. But also, first things first, but keeping kind of lenders and financials aside, because that's a whole nother conversation. I think boutique hotels need to begin the process right now. One most important thing for them is how are they going to staff back up again? Because they're going to need to replace those who have been laid off and figure out about the furloughed. I don't know, how that really works, but unless they're coming back for sure, they're going to need to have a plan of action. And kind of different than it's been for many years here, it's going to be an employer's marketplace with many, many, many amazing, talented people out there who would actually love to join a fabulous boutique hotel. They, like I've always said, there's a little bit of boutique in all of us. So this is a great opportunity for them. For employers also, not that I'm harping just on this side of it, but checking social media is kind of important. It's kind of a key place, to look at credentials and recommendations. But this is also notice to everyone who's listening to this out there you better clean up your social media now and think about that as employers. That's the easy place for them to look. Secondly, of course, like Jonathan said, the sanitizing. There's so many new sanitizing companies coming out there now because it's going to be absolutely crucial to open. And so hotels should really see if they can book a future date. And if, you're able to make any small upgrades or changes, which we talked about in our design and architecture webinar a couple of weeks ago, number one, you can negotiate really great pricing with suppliers right now. And you can finish up rather quickly because you won't have guests around and worry about closing down a floor. So that's kind of my advice to them.
Well, yeah, because it's kind of going through, this can be, an opportunity for some as well. It's kind of what we've been saying throughout this whole thing. It's your strategy. But my advice to boutique hoteliers around the world right now would be keep your creativity going. I know that can sound like fluff, but it's not. It's actually a big key in keeping engaged with your guests that, they want to be a part of your culture. And also don't panic. You got to focus on the now. You need to keep a balance of the short term and the long term because every decision you make is going to impact both. So if you have to let your employees go, we get it. Companies around the world are doing it. But stay connected with your employees too. You don't want to lose them. I mean, finding talent and, that family, it's hard to do. It is so hard to create that. Send them care packages like SVE did. Sam Nazarian, he had to let go of employees. What did he do? He sent care packages to them. And last but not least, we're going to have a comeback, okay? Especially on the boutique side. There is going to be a comeback. You just have to keep your head on straight. Don't get into panic mode. Think clearly. And I think for all the travelers out there, it's like you don't know you miss it until it's gone. Because for me personally, I am starting to book travel like I've never done before. I cannot wait to get out there. I'm going to go to destinations I've never been to before. And I know I'm not the only person like that. And I'm going to speak just for the Gen Z and Gen Ys out there, I'm hearing all over social media, people have bucket lists and they cannot wait to get out there. So, I mean, we're going to have a comeback. Don't panic.
It might not be till 2021, but that's okay.
Well, guys, thank you so much for making time to talk to me today. I really appreciate your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, my pleasure. Great to meet you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Lodging on Demand. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to our channel. Or you can listen to Lodging on Demand as a podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify.